Hello, English language learners. This is Alan, your English coach, back with another episode of Pronunciation Practice, a series of short videos to help English learners improve their pronunciation. As you know, for the last several weeks, we've been looking at the sound schwa in English, which is extremely easy to make. It's a simple caveman grunt like this. That's all you have to do. So easy, but also extremely common in English, so it's important to know when to use it. However, it's also just as important to know when not to use it. Sometimes when we learn something new, we start seeing it all over the place and we start using it everywhere, and we start to use it in places where it shouldn't be used. That can happen with this schwa sound. And last week, I gave you some homework for the first time ever. You were supposed to look at verbs in English, or more importantly, listen to verbs in English, and find out or notice or observe when we put them in the past tense, we're talking regular verbs here, that are put into the past tense simply by adding a D or an ED at the end. When they are pronounced, when that ED is pronounced like ud, which is schwa plus de, as in, for example, grade, graded, or rate, rated, right? The ED sounds like plus de. And when it wasn't, because of course lots of verbs in English end in other letters besides T and D. So today I'm back to reveal the answer. Hopefully you noticed some instances. I gave you two options besides the ud sound. The ED can also sound like a simple t, which is the sound that T typically makes in English, or a simple d, which is a D sound usually in English. So here's the answer. And it goes all the way back to our very first installment ever of pronunciation practice, where I talked about voiced and voiceless sounds in English. And remember that a voiced sound is one that when you make it, you can feel your voice box vibrating. And an unvoiced or voiceless sound is one where you can't feel anything here in your throat, where your voice box is when you make that sound. Examples would be p, p. P, the letter P, is an unvoiced sound. You can't feel anything. B, b, B is a voiced sound because you can feel a vibration here. So let me give you the answer. I know you've been eagerly waiting to hear about this for a whole week since the last episode. When a verb in its normal form, present or infinitive, ends with a voiced sound, then the ED takes on the voiced sound. So what's the voiced sound among t and d? Put our fingers up to our throats. T, d. Oh, the voiced sound is d, d. So when a verb ends in a voiced sound, for example, b or g or then the ED simply sounds like a d. For example, grabbed, grabbed. Notice the E is completely silent. It doesn't sound like an E, it doesn't sound like a schwa, it's just b-d, grabbed. Flame, flamed, flamed. There's another example. Now, when the final sound of the root verb is unvoiced, you've probably already guessed this, it takes the unvoiced version of ED, which is the simple t sound. For example, drop, dropped, dropped. Notice again, just like with the d sound, the E is completely silent. It doesn't sound like an E, it doesn't sound like a schwa, it's like it's not even there, dropped. How about another one? Back, backed, backed. So now that you know that, I'd like you to put yourselves on high alert for listening to English verbs, people speaking about verbs and putting them in the past. And notice that because this is one of those few rules in English which has almost no exceptions. And if you've been learning English for a while, you know that almost every rule has lots and lots of exceptions in English. This is one of those ones that doesn't, which is nice because it makes it easier to predict how a word is going to sound. So try that. See if you can find a few examples of verbs ending in voiced sounds and a few ending in unvoiced sounds. And then of course ones ending in d and t. And see what happens when you add that ed at the end. Please put any comments in the question and comment area below. And meanwhile, I hope that you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.